Hello everyone, a very warm welcome to this week's episode of the Sky Sports F1 podcast. I hope you're doing very well. Joining me for this one, we've got our very own Natalie Pinkham, alongside taking the mic once again this week, Harry Benjamin, who does a little exhale, but all good, Harry. You're looking forward to it?
Yeah, no, I am. I've been invited back, so that's exciting.
Sign.
Yeah, they've let me come back for another go at it. I'm really looking forward to it. I've never been to Austria, I have to confess, never been to the Red Bull Ring, so I'm really excited. Everyone says that the facilities and the track is just amazing, so I'm looking forward to getting stuck in. And it's a sprint weekend as well, so it's going to be absolute carnage from day one.
Yeah, you get two opportunities to commentate on a race, which must be quite fun. Nat, how are you? I asked you before if you were doing Austria, because normally you might be found at Worthy Farm at Glastonbury, which is this week.
It's a good point. I'm missing Glastonbury, but I got to see Taylor Swift, so you can't have it all.
Oh, that's a pretty good reply. I don't think I'm going to get a chance to see it. Was it good?
Oh, it was phenomenal. It was another level. It was just astonishing. Quite emotional. I mean, I went in with not low expectations, but I didn't expect to be as blown away as I was. I think just seeing the pure joy, the universal love in that stadium was just, and actually most of it coming from my daughter.
Yeah.
Very
Did
cute.
she sing Love Story? That's the question. Does she still do that one? She still does that. Yeah. Oh, she hasn't forgotten her country roots.
Best one.
Good. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I've watched the one on Disney Plus, which is very good. I've watched the whole 2 hours or whatever.
Have you actually? What?
Yeah.
2 hours?
You don't even have an 8-year-old to blame it on. You just do it for the pure love of Tay-Tay.
Yes, and also a bit of a staging geek. Like the visuals and the audio and the lighting is very cool.
Yeah, it is cool.
Yeah. So anyway, all right. Enough of Taylor Swift. As she seems
There's
to be
never
dominating.
enough of Taylor Swift.
Dominating all the news agendas at the moment. Let's talk about Formula One. Let's kick off with what I've learned before we get into the meat of the podcast. What have you learned, Harry, in the last week in Formula One?
Oh, what have I learned? Always a lot in Formula One. I think probably what I've learned is sort of, put Formula One down at your peril. I think I was at the start of this year, I was probably a bit on the doom and gloom side, thinking it was gonna be a Red Bull, Max Verstappen walkover. And while I'm always take your hat off, what they do is incredible, you want a fight, don't you? You want to see the battles throughout the field. And I just thought, we're gonna be in for a long season, the longest ever, that's gonna be made even longer. But actually, I think while Verstappen may well probably still go on to win the driver's title, I think the Constructors is up for grabs. I think we're going to see Lando Norris get a couple more race wins this season. I think we've got a battle on our hands, and I'm so excited.
Yeah, what a way to tee up the rest of the podcast and indeed the rest of the season. Nat, what about you? What have you learned?
I learned a couple of key things. One, that I feel like this new generation of driver is taking more ownership and responsibility for their actions, which, can't be said of all young people, quite frankly. It feels different. It feels as if they're owning the moment. I'm thinking Lando with his start, and I'm, going back to George Russell, even Lewis Hamilton, saying actually it's on me. I'm not sure I totally agree with it. It's endearing, and I think it's very respectful, but sometimes you need to carve your own narrative as well and define the way that people perceive you. And if you're going and saying, I had a terrible start, then even if you didn't watch the race, you might go, well, Lando had a terrible start because he told us so. But anyway, that's a sort of a part B to the part A. And the second thing I learned, which I don't think is anything new, is that it isn't all about the car, because Lando did, in fact, have the fastest car, and yet Max Verstappen, for me, was the driver of the day. So if you were looking at the results and saying, there you go again, fastest car, how boring, Max won it again. No, it was more than that, and I think we are seeing the very best of Max Verstappen in 2024.
Yeah, that tees up our next conversation brilliantly, actually, because I want to get into a few of those points that you've made about, and certainly a bit with regards to the influence of the driver now, because the field is so tight and that battle between Norris and Verstappen is so close. So yeah, it's now coming down to the fine margins, isn't it, between the drivers? Just quickly, what I learned is that Lewis Hamilton is obviously we know the greatest of all time in Formula One. He's now got 18 consecutive seasons with a podium finish in Formula One, and that is just about an Ollie Behrman.
No.
Yeah, just about. It's a bit under an Ollie Behrman, but in terms of the age of Ollie. And it just goes to show how long Lewis has been dominating and doing brilliant and amazing things in our sport. So I thought that was a great stat. Right, here we go. So this is what's we're gonna get into. We're gonna talk about that Verstappen and Norris battle. We're also going to look at what's going on at Ferrari and perhaps those slightly punchy words between the two after the race. Look at what's been going on at Mercedes, because they've vastly improved over the last few races, and also have a look ahead to Austria this weekend. But yeah, I think the place to start is with Lando and with Verstappen, and just basically trying to answer the question, which is kind of what I've put as the title of the podcast, is who is quickest? Who is the quickest car in 2024? Nat, I'll kick off with you. If you were a young driver, let's say you've just entered Formula One, right? You've got the world at your feet, okay? And you've skipped Formula 3, you've gone straight into Formula 2, you've won the Formula 2 championship. You have got Andrea Stella and Christian Horner knocking at your door saying, we have got a car for you next year, even this year in the current status. Who would you pick? Which car do you think is quickest right now and will continue to be for the rest of the season?
Well, I think one thing that's been great about 2024 is that hasn't been an easy question to answer from race weekend to race weekend. And that's what's kept us on the edge of our seat. The fact that we've had these 4 different pole sitters of late, and that's thrilling and that's brilliant for the sport, and that's brilliant for the neutral in our sport. In terms of the car, I'm so encouraged by McLaren's trajectory. I mean, it's Austria last year where we saw everything change. It's just been a year. I mean, that kind of blows me away. So if they can continue on that trajectory, then, where's the limit? I think I'd be very excited by that. They've definitely got the buzz and the energy about them at the moment. I suppose, though, with Red Bull, they still won the race. And I think it's the complete package that you're looking for, isn't it? Not just the fastest car. You're looking for great decisions under pressure. I'm thinking about Lando's pit stop last time out when he just didn't come in time. And it's about the experience of being at the sharp end and making those decisions under pressure that I think Red Bull does so well. So am I going to give you an answer?
Well, look, actually, Natalie, funny you say that, because Harry is also looking for a seat in Formula One next year. And he's got also both team principals knocking at his door.
But I didn't win the championship, Nat.
Yeah, unfortunately, you didn't win the F2 championship.
Sorry about that, but ruthless racer that I am.
Go on. I mean, if who would you pick, Harry?
I think I would go for McLaren, purely because I think Andrea Stella is team principal of the year already. I think he was team principal of the year last year. I just think that man, when you sit and talk to him, he just has a way with words. He's so technical, but yet he makes you feel like you understand what he's telling you. He says it in a way that is so understandable, and I think he gets the best out of Lando Norris. And he's also, each year they've started, I think, behind where they've wanted to be in terms of performance, and they've been open and honest about that. Nothing but transparent. And yet the rate at which the upgrades have transformed their performance this year and last year has been phenomenal. It's probably one of the best sort of advances that I've seen with a team over the last few years. So I would pick McLaren. I think I do agree with Nat. I think McLaren did have the fastest car in Spain, particularly in the hands of Lando Norris. I think if you average it out, though, I think Red Bull that car is still a little bit faster, but compared to the first 5 races of the season to the last 5 races, the margins are so tight. I think at the start, over 1 lap pace, the gap between Red Bull and McLaren was around about 4.5 tenths of a second. Now it's about 0.5 tenth of a second. And that's why every single team decision makes such a difference, as well as the driver. Max Verstappen makes a difference time and time again. He has a couple of extra tenths within himself that no matter what the car does, he will go a couple of tenths quicker. But let's not rule out the importance that Red Bull play either. A 1.9 second pit stop, absolutely phenomenal to do that in the heat of a race when when you are being hunted down by Lando Norris and a quick McLaren. But I would still go for McLaren. I think, personally, from my driving perspective, I would perform better there.
Closer to home as well.
I mean,
maybe.
Matt, you're assuming that this man can even fit in a Formula One car.
Well, yes, that is the other. That 6'5", what's that, 196 centimeters or something? It's not happening. I'm not very aerodynamically efficient.
Yeah. Hopefully, Harry, at one point in your long career in Formula One, you're going to get the chance to go into a Formula One car. Someone's going to have to make it happen.
I hope so. Well, I know Alpine do that 2012 car, don't they? You're allowed to have a few runarounds in that. I've got my eye on that at some stage. Did he? See, I've got the feet though as well. That's the issue. I've got. I wasn't going to bring that up on the podcast again.
Yeah.
But that means the pedals. That's another nightmare for me.
Matt, I just want to pick up on one point that Harry made there about the upgrades with McLaren. It's not a given that upgrades work. And it's very interesting because you only have to take VCARB into account. This weekend, they bring this whole raft of upgrades in, and actually they seem to go backwards. So actually, it's not just about bringing upgrades, it's about bringing the right upgrades and knowing the car, knowing the direction that you need to go in, and then having the confidence to plough ahead.
Yeah, and I mean, there's countless examples of that just this season, isn't there? But I'm
yeah,
sure.
because we call them upgrades, but that's something of a misnomer. I suppose they just could be called changes.
Yeah,
because they're not necessarily upgrades, are they?
Sometimes they're downgrades.
Yeah,
exactly.
Modifications. Yeah, so it's got less of a ring to it, hasn't it? But yes, no, you're right. Absolutely, very, very good point. I wonder, as we get, and you mentioned this actually, Nat, at the beginning, with regards to the sort of the fine margins now that we're getting into. These cars are so close together, and Lando made this point. He said 1 or 2 meters makes the difference between winning a race and not winning, and that's in relation to the start that he made at the beginning of the Grand Prix, overtaken by Max and also George Russell. Meant he had a much tougher fight on his hands, and obviously if he'd stayed in the lead. So now I just at this point, it's quite exciting, isn't it? Because it is feels like it's just on the drivers. It's yes, it's on the team and the pit stops, but the drivers have got so much control, and it is just that split second. That's sort of elite sport, isn't it? At its very best.
Yeah, I mean, it's what we want, isn't it? I suppose you could just call them variables. There are many variables, and there are at least. Well, look, we know that the 20 guys up there are the best in the world at what they do. They're exceptional talent, and anyone who says otherwise is being very unfair. They've had to work hard to get there. Nobody is there through luck or chance. I know easy accusations to be thrown around, but ultimately you have to earn super license points, and you have to really cut the mustard to be in Formula One. I mean, honestly, so compelling. Obviously, we've had championships where there have been 2 drivers, but right now I feel like 1 of 8 could put it on pole, and therefore potentially convert it into a race win. I don't remember that in my sort of 12, 13-year career in Formula One, being that open going into a race weekend.
I think it's so easy, isn't it, to find problems with Formula One these days and to be a bit, doom and gloom. But actually, you're completely right. The margins are so tight. Yeah, take the 2 McLaren drivers. Piastri, okay, wasn't quite as comfortable all weekend compared to his teammate Lando Norris, but he still wasn't far off in terms of actual tenths of a second between, the top 10 on the grid. This is the closest Formula One has probably ever been in terms of the disparity in performance between the top team and the slowest team. And so we are nitpicking, but that is what Formula One is all about, isn't it? It is the wanting perfection every time. But I think it's great that we can even be in that position right now to nitpick, to go next time out this weekend. I could not say confidently, well, okay, it's Verstappen on pole for the win, because actually, while okay, that might happen, we still don't really know. Things could change, and that's a brilliant position to be in.
It's changed quickly as well, we should point out, hasn't it? From the start of 2022,
yes,
where even the start of this season was as you said, Harry, at the beginning, sort of bit of doom and gloom and people worrying it was going to be a very one-sided fight. It's definitely not turned out that way. Now, what about Max Verstappen? If there's any doubt that people have of his ability, not of his ability, but if there's a doubt that people have of, well, he's just in the best car, he's just doing it week after week, it's all very boring. I think now that he's being challenged, and arguably he's being challenged for the first time in a couple of years since 2021, week in, week out being challenged, and he's able to get the most out of that car plus some more, it's really impressive, isn't it? You can be under no doubt he's at the very, very top of his game.
I mean, what I actually find boring is the criticism of Max Verstappen. We are witnessing one of the greatest ever drivers in our sport, and that is an honour in itself. And he is able to take the car into a race weekend and deliver weekend in, weekend out. Okay, not necessarily putting it on pole, but also a level of maturity to his driving that we didn't necessarily see at the start of his career. So looking at Monaco, for example, able to come away from that race weekend with a decent haul of points. And really, we've said it so many times before, you only have to look at the difference between him and his teammate, as you do with every driver up and down the grid. That is your direct comparison. And yet again, this weekend, we have seen why Max Verstappen is genuinely one of the best of a generation.
Let's do the Lando side. And I don't know if you've noticed a change in Lando's sort of demeanour over the last few races. I think I have, and I think he seems to have kind of gone into like championship mode. The way he was after getting pole on Saturday, he was happy, I think, but it wasn't like, let's have a big party. It was a lot more like, no, let's do this in the race tomorrow because it's all about the race now. He seems to have changed, right? A little bit.
I think he's always had that kind of, well, all drivers have to have that inner confidence from somewhere, don't they? But you're right. I think he's now realised the team he has around him, the car he has, for the first time in a long time, he is able and capable to take the challenge and to win. Arguably, he could have won Spain. Arguably, he could have won out in Canada. I know Formula One is full of woulda, shoulda, coulda, and it ultimately didn't happen. But the fact is, it could have happened. And that is the first time regularly, consistently, it could have happened for Lando Norris and McLaren. I think he knows that. I think he's actually being increasingly self-critical of himself over the last few races as well, because he knows, he can feel it is within a touching distance. He's had offers to go off to other teams within the last couple of years. He's had the offer from Red Bull. He didn't take it. He's made his bed and he's stuck with it. And I think that's given him power and confidence that he has right now. And I think the next couple of races that we go to, Austria this weekend, he's got pretty good form around there. Silverstone leading the race last year. He's on a crest of a wave, I think, right now, Lando Norris. I think the summer is going to be very, very good for him.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree with that more. I think more than could, he should. And that's the difference for Lando, is he believes he should have won. That's why he's kicking himself. That's why he is beating himself up about that start, because he should have notched up a couple more wins. And they'll come of that. I think we're all in agreement, aren't we? But that's a marked shift in his attitude and that of the team, is that they're now coming into weekends where second isn't good enough.
Yeah, we need to go back to some interviews, don't we, from last year and look at the change in demeanour.
But the other thing you need to remember, Matt, is that all of these drivers have won a lot before they got into Formula One. They're used to winning. They're used to being a big fish in a small pond. And ultimately, they then come into F1 and only one can win. And once you get a taste of that, you want more. And you realise there is no going backwards, because that is ultimately the end of your career if you do. So he's tasted victory in Miami. It's a sweet taste that he wants to savour. And let's dish up some more of that, please.
Do we think, and we'll come on to Mercedes a bit later, but it seems a good time to ask this question, could we get an all-British podium at Silverstone? It's happened before in the past, but look, we've got Lando Norris, we've got George Russell, we've got Lewis Hamilton, who've obviously had vast improvements recently. There is a strong possibility, admittedly without Max Verstappen playing a part in this, but there is a strong possibility it could happen.
I mean, when you've got three British drivers in the top four teams in Formula One at the moment, there's got to be a decent chance that all three could end up on the podium together at some stage. I mean, if it happens at the British Grand Prix, then I think every one of us would go absolutely wild. But it all depends on, to a large degree, Max Verstappen, doesn't it? He, at the moment, as we've said, he is Formula One's benchmark. He is the man that everybody has to get up to and match, first of all, and then overcome and beat. He is operating at such an incredibly high level that, he is tough to beat. And in Formula One, you need everything to work for you. A driver can only do so much. I think it's brilliant that Mercedes have finally found a way forward, it seems, after so many false starts. The search for this North Star has been ongoing for quite a couple of years now, and it does feel like they have finally found the way forward. And I think that's given confidence not only to George Russell, but Lewis Hamilton again. You can already see in Hamilton's demeanor that he's enjoying life again, it seems. He's looking forward to getting back in that car already. So it's not impossible. I don't, absolutely. Let's say yes, it's going to happen. British Grand Prix,
Yeah,
top three all British drivers. Let's go with it.
Harry, that's a perfect segue into talking about Mercedes' form at the moment, because it has changed, and it's definitely changed for the positive. And Nat, you must have done over the last couple of years a fair few interviews with Lewis in the pen, where it is doom and gloom, and he's downbeat and disheartened by what's going on, not where he is used to fighting. But you look at him this weekend, he's got. It seems reinvigorated. He was smiling. It was really good to see, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was great to see. Now, I quite appreciate his honesty, because there is no sugarcoating it with Lewis in the pen. If he's in a bad mood, that is it. You can tell straight away when he comes in, his shoulders are slumped, he's sort of slightly detached, and you can tell he's in a bad mood. And you could pretty much ask anything, and he's not going to give you insight that you might want, because he wants to tell you what he wants to say, and that may be very limited. Now you can see a spring back in his step, but again, I really appreciated his honesty in owning it, that he is not there anywhere near where he wants to be when it comes to qualifying. And he knew that this weekend was crucial, that he qualified well, and that in turn translated to a much stronger race. He's still 8-2 to George Russell. He wants to do something about that. And look, I'm not a racer, neither of you are, but I guarantee every single racer I've ever spoken to, they think about quali the most, because it's just you versus them over a single lap. That is out and out speed, pure pace. So if he can get that sorted out, I'm sure more podiums will follow. I mean, it's kind of ironic, because there'll be part of him looking over at the red garage and wondering if they're going to get their issues sorted out by the time he joins them next year. I mean, that was so different to the start of the year. We were saying, God, I bet he just can't wait to hang up his Mercedes race suit and get across to the Scuderia. But look, that's what the season's doing, and that's why it's so fascinating, because it's ebbing and flowing, and we just can't necessarily predict who will be strong at which track.
There must be a little part of him that goes, "Oh, this is interesting." Slight change in form. What did you make, Harry, of his a couple of overtakes? That one on Sainz, and also the one on his teammate George Russell. It was good to see Lewis on out and out pace, just overtaking other drivers. It was good to see, I thought.
It was. I actually, it was one of the better Spanish Grand Prix over the last few years that we've had, in terms of so it's not a track known for mega overtaking, but we saw some good moves. And I think that just highlights those overtakes, how he's got a little bit of that mojo back. He's confident. He's happy to put the car in a position where, previously he might not have been so comfortable in doing so, because the car was maybe feeling a bit anonymous, not sure which way it was going to go. So look, when it comes to the qualifying pace as well, especially, I think there was 0.02 of a second between George Russell and Lewis Hamilton in qualifying for the Spanish Grand Prix. They've got one of the smallest margins between them as teammates when it comes to qualifying. That will comfort Lewis, but Lewis, he's an out-and-out racer. I mean, what more is there to say? When he's got the car, he can do magic things, and I think they're not there yet, but they are going in the right direction. I don't think they've suddenly flicked a switch and they're going to be up challenging Lando Norris and Lewis Hamilton, but I don't think, and Max Verstappen, but I don't think it's too far away.
Let's talk about what's going on at Ferrari, because that is interesting, and I think what happened this weekend in terms of between Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc. So not wanting to blow it out of proportion, but Sainz passed Leclerc on the fourth lap. They brushed wheels. Leclerc said that the contact caused damage to his car. Sainz said Leclerc complains too many times. That was sort of the big headline that was shared around. Nat, I mean, what was your view on the actual incident itself? Karun said it was hard racing. Did you agree? And where do you see this kind of going hereafter?
I mean, look, I wholeheartedly agree with Karun, and that's what we want to see, isn't it? Hard racing. I'm not surprised that this has happened. I'm surprised it hasn't happened sooner, actually. I think Carlos is incredibly good at keeping things under wraps and not going public with criticism of his teammate. You consider they've been together for 4 seasons now, and actually they have moved along very smoothly together, all things considered. He's probably got to a point now where he's feeling a bit of pressure about where he goes next. He needs to sort of make a decision about his future. He's also driving incredibly well, so he's having to put himself in the shop window week in, week out. And he's probably thinking, well, does it matter now if I criticise publicly? I'm leaving anyway.
He's looking out for number one, isn't
he?
he?
Well, he has to.
I guess,
and that's perfectly reasonable. He has to look after his own career. The team has said he is surplus to their requirements. Therefore, he has to focus on what happens next for Carlos Sainz. And I think they're both great drivers. They're both great guys. But it's no great surprise to me that this has happened. As I say, I'm only surprised that it didn't happen sooner. And actually, I really respect them for holding it back as long as they have.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they've had a couple of close scrapes previously, haven't they? Where there's been a little bit of just take it easy, boys. Come on, you're both Ferrari drivers, both teammates.
Harry, I was genuinely impressed with the way that Carlos Sainz seemed to want Charles to win Monaco. Didn't he?
That's the thing. I think they're one of the best two to have as teammates because they give each other everything they've got, but they also know that they both drive for Ferrari and they're willing to play the team game, and they have been, which is why I think this kind of marks. I agree with you. I think this marks a bit of a shift for Carlos Sainz. I think if I was Sainz, I'd be pretty aggrieved at my situation at the moment. I've got to leave Ferrari, and I've got the choice between two of the slowest teams on the grid last time out, or maybe a left field approach recently from Alpine, but they're hit and miss left, right, and centre. So you're stepping away from a Ferrari and regular podiums, the chances for wins. So I think that is starting to build. But Carlos Sainz is, he's such his mindset is that of an engineer, isn't it? That's why I think engineers love having him in the car, because he just thinks so clean and clinically. And even during the Spanish Grand Prix, there was a moment they split the strategies in the end, and Sainz almost drove off the road at one point, coming down to turn one to let Charles Leclerc through. Didn't want to get in the way of his race. But I think when the race is on, Sainz wants to, the race win wasn't on, but I think when the position is there to have, they're going to race it out. But they have this sort of Jekyll and Hyde where they will also will each other on. And that's why I think they've been quite good teammates. That's why I don't think this is going to upset the apple cart too much going forward. I just think Sainz is also feeling that pressure suddenly in the back of his mind that, the talk every weekend from us lot is going to be, well, where's Sainz going to go this week? What's latest? And until he makes that decision, that's going to keep building and building.
And Harry, you said 3 key words there. Spanish Grand Prix. It's his home race. Of course, emotions are going to be running high. Adrenaline is going to be searing through his veins. And he's going to want to put on an exceptional performance in front of his home fans.
That could have been his last chance of getting a podium at his home Grand Prix for the first time in what might be a long time as well. So all of that factors in.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point about it being his home race. And I'm sure once we get to Austria as well, it will all be put under the carpet, and it will, be answering our questions in the Thursday pen interviews, and it will all be fine. So yes, let's not stir the pot too much. Right, just time I think to have a quick look ahead to Austria. And Harry, you mentioned it at the top. It's a sprint weekend, so I'm quite intrigued to get your thoughts on the sprint format so far and how you found it. And just remind people that it's obviously a sprint shootout on the Friday afternoon. Before then we get the sprint race on a Saturday morning, before then qualifying as normal Saturday afternoon, and then Sunday is the race as normal. We've got this is the third of 6. We've got 3 more to come in Austin, Brazil and Qatar. So yeah, what have you made of it so far?
Yeah, we're gonna have a bit of a break after this one, aren't we, from sprints? But tell you what, I love the sprints. I was skeptical when we first started them, but I quite like them. I love the fact that we can get straight into the action. It puts everybody on the back foot. One practice session is not enough time for these drivers and teams to dial in properly. And then immediately you're asking them to go, okay, quick as you can, qualify please for the sprint race next day. Thank you very much. I love it. I'm all for it. I think it's there's more action, it's fast paced, and it leaves us asking more questions and wondering where is everybody at. So I'm a big fan of them, and I've enjoyed them so far. I think Martin says this a lot. I still think that the worst sprint race is going to be better than a free practice 3. So I think that just sums it up perfectly, really. So I'm all for it. And particularly around this track in Austria, we've seen some good races there. Quite a short track as well, one of the shortest on the calendar. Big elevation changes, a couple of high curbs as well that can not treat a car very well. So I wonder how that might affect Red Bull, particularly with their curb riding. It's not particularly solved as yet. And then you had this middle section, which is, I always describe it as a bit like a bobsleigh kind of part of the track. You're going downhill, undulating. It's fast as well. And before you know it, you're back round again. So qualifying is actually going to be, I think, carnage as usual, because trying to find yourself space on track for a clean lap is going to be so hard. We're going to hear a lot of drivers on the radio complaining about where they are on track. And equally, for race day and qualifying as well, track limits. Can't wait to have that discussion again. That's going to be fun. I think there were a ridiculous amount of penalties last year for that. So that's going to be a fun one to keep a track of on the race control screen.
Yeah, it's the shortest track in terms of time, just 64 seconds to get around it, and the fifth shortest in terms of length. And you're right, Harry, it's so tight and technical, and track position is everything. And I can't imagine the stress on the pit wall about when you put your car out there for the optimum time to get that all-important quali lap in. And yeah, cut and paste everything you've just said in terms of the sprint weekend. They do make them crazy busy for the drivers, for the teams, for us. It is constant go, which, you know, in itself is great because the adrenaline starts pumping early doors and doesn't stop until you leave the paddock on a Sunday night. But it's great. And I think secretly the drivers quite like it. They quite like it. I remember being at a race where we only had one practice session. Was it Germany, Nürburgring, during COVID? And
because of the
George
rain.
Russell's,
was it bad? Was that when Hulkenberg came in last minute?
Yeah, and basically they all said, well, you know, we all went into it in the unknown. And actually that made for really exciting racing because it leveled the playing field somewhat because you went into it without, you know, a couple of hours of practice, and that made all the difference.
I think there is still a little bit of fine tuning to be done in terms of the timings of things. I think there's a little bit, particularly for the track action, I think there's a bit of waiting around for the fans and for those watching on the telly in between sessions. But I think there might be a little bit of fine tuning still to be done there. But aside from that, I'm all for it.
So predictions, if we can, after all that we've said in this podcast about it being so tight and so hard,
we're all going to say Max will win.
We're all going to say, well, you know, in front of the orange army, you know, there's going to be flares left, right, and centre.
Yeah,
it's going to give the home fans something to cheer about. Would you say Max's favourite? Maybe not predict the winner, but Max's favourite, is that a fair?
Well, he's got an unbelievable record there, but as Harry pointed out earlier in the pod, so Lando's got a decent record there, and I always think with these things that, you know, when you return to a track that you've done well at, something else kicks in and you enjoy it, you buzz off it. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You go, yeah, I can do well here, and then you do.
Yeah, I think one of my best memories of Lando Norris at this track was it 2020, and during COVID, Lewis Hamilton was on for third, had a 5-second time penalty though, and you could just hear Lando almost being coached through the final few laps of where he needed to give himself a bit more battery power, where he needed to hit the apex cleaner to try and get within that 5 seconds, and he did, and he got on the podium. So I think that just highlights that Lando's got a good record round here. Verstappen is the favourite, I think you have to say that, but I think Norris has got a good shout of being in the hunt for a race win again. But
Matt, what we have to point out is the weather. Because nestled in the Styrian Hills, anything can happen, and normally does. So I've had a look at the forecast, and it's predicting weird thunderstorms all weekend. It's glorious weather in the UK, but not necessarily so in Austria, the Red Bull Ring. So anything could happen. I mean, we might suddenly get a downpour and then it dries out very quickly. So that is really going to throw the cat amongst the pigeons.
Really fun to broadcast in those conditions, though, now.
Bring your rain jacket.
Look, it's going to be. I'm personally very excited for this weekend. I think with the sprint as well, it's going to be very, very interesting. And yes, potentially another Lando and Verstappen, or maybe someone is going to cut. You know, maybe the Mercedes are also going to improve as well. So yes, here are your timings for this weekend. We've got F2 and F3 action as well. So on Friday, join us from 11 a.m. for practice 1. Then we're straight into sprint qualifying from 3 p.m. for a session start of 3:30. Saturday on air at 10 o'clock ahead of the sprint race at 11. Then building up to the main qualifying session from 2 o'clock. Sunday, catch all the build up from 12:30 before a lights out at 2 o'clock. So yes.
Can't remember any of that, Matt. Can you run that by me again?
Well, yeah. One more time.
I just write that down.
You'll be there now. You'll be fine. You'll know what's happening when. When are you both going tomorrow?
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, fly out tomorrow.
Cool. Pack everything. Raincoat, shorts, flip-flops, you name it. But yes, lovely race. Very scenic, very picturesque is Austria. So yeah, enjoy.
We'll go for
Have
a good
lovely
hike,
time.
Harry.
Should I bring my hiking boots?
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's a lovely little hike up the hill.
Okay. No, well, I've heard it's beautiful, the place. So
It is
I can't wait
beautiful.
to check it all out.
Yeah. And if you like EDM, then you'll hear a lot
I'm
of that.
known for my being a fan of EDM. So
The campsites are very loud from first thing in the morning with EDM. Such are the Dutch fans who obviously love Max. Right. Thank you, Harry. Thank you, Nat. Have a great weekend out in Austria. We're going to be back next Tuesday to look back at the Austrian Grand Prix and to look ahead to the British Grand Prix as well with Jack Doohan, which is very exciting. So I hope you can join us for that. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.